Hey everyone, I just want to say a few words about data visualization, and I'm starting on this slide, which is just a textbook cover because if you really want to get into this, this is the book I'd recommend as the introduction. Storytelling with data. It's something I've gone through with data scientists who worked for me, and because it really is something that I found quite helpful when I think about how I want to put together data for a presentation. And so there's a few rules that the book goes through that I'll just overview here for those of you who aren't necessarily going to go and do a deep dive on data viz, which is fine. This is not a class on data visualization, but I think still getting the overview can help. The data visualization might be the only thing that's seen. So to the extent that you can provide context in the visual itself, that's great. Choose an appropriate visual display. Don't use pie charts for data over time. Generally, don't use pie charts. There are a few cases where they're appropriate, but they're probably the most overused. Like if it's more than two, maybe three things, don't use a pie chart. Really don't like seeing like pie charts with seven things and trying to figure out like which angle is bigger. Also, exploding pie charts are even worse, where one of them's like 3D. In general, 3D graphs are usually like something to stay away from unless there's a really strong reason for going there. Similar to the like, don't use 3D graphs because they distort things. It's also just good to eliminate clutter. Like you want the thing you are trying to say to stand out. So focus your attention on that. And then tell a story. And when I say tell a story, I do not mean a mystery story. Like it should not be a mystery. It should be a straightforward story with the most important part told first. So not the traditional storyteller's narrative, but like a clear, we saw this happen and this is why. Maybe you won't even get to and this is why. Maybe it's just a story that is like, this is the thing that happened last quarter or last year or in the fiscal year for the government ending, whatever the story is, just make it clear, make a clean takeaway, right? This is the same thing, repeated and in a much nicer visual format, which is to say, one, again, the format can matter and can help make things memorable. And also, occasionally repetition helps to land a point. It's not always bad. This is just an example I like to show. So like before, we've got what I'd call a spaghetti chart, right? Like it's really hard to know what's going on here. Which of these lines am I supposed to care about? Maybe it's this one, the regional average. On the other hand, like if I'm not the regional manager, maybe I care about the particular dealership that I work at, in which case that one should be brought out, right? In here you can see like they left all the info in, but they grayed out the background one so we know which one we're supposed to be looking at. They also said, well, there's not, actually that much being told here in terms of an overtime story, right? So maybe we just needed a simpler chart because there's not that much movement throughout the course of this 2 years that the graph is showing. One thing I might still change, though it was hard in this case, is like this says car sales over time. It's a fine title. Ideally, though, your title might be the only thing someone reads. If there is a clear takeaway from your chart, I would make that the title. Like I might actually make this say car sales are flat over the past 2 years, right? Like that seems to me to be the main takeaway from this line chart. Like there's just not a lot of variation. There's not a clear upward or downward trend. So maybe there's a slight downward trend now that I'm squinting at this, in which case you could say like car sales down 2% over time or whatever that actually happens to be. Just like put that in the top line. Again, and this goes back to the like tell your story clearly, make it as easy to find as possible. The numbers don't actually speak for themselves. You have to do some interpretation, and ideally you're going to help your audience with that interpretation.